Yes, it has now.
There we go.
Hello there, and welcome to another Talking Cafe. I'm Izzy Sylvester, broadcasting from West Somerset.
And I'm Wayne, village agent.
So we're both village agents over in West Somerset, and we have with us today a very special guest, Mark Ford from the Somerset Waste Partnership. And you're here because it's a special week.
Yeah, this is Somerset Reduce week. The first time we've done it, we're trying to do 4 kind of awareness weeks over the course of a year, and this is Reduce.
What does that mean, Mark?
Well, it is about.
Excuse me for being a bit.
It means it's about buying less or buying differently to reduce waste. Fundamentally, so it's different from recycling, which is taking something that can't be used anymore, collecting it so it can be turned into a new thing. It's a bit different to reuse, which is okay. Something's broken, I'm going to fix it and reuse it, or I'm going to use this for something else. This is about trying to sort of reduce waste by stopping unnecessary consumption, I guess, which is quite a big topic.
Right. So I'll just throw something out to you. So in fact, this week, my husband and I have pledged not to buy yogurt because of the plastic pot.
Well,
is that an example of what you're talking about?
That would be. Is that because, yes, so that's reducing. Yeah, I mean, I guess in that instance, you can recycle the plastic pot, which is good, but reducing is even better. I guess it's unless you go out and buy a load of something else to replace your yogurt, which takes up more materials. But the whole idea is, if and this it's such a big thing. We live in a society where we buy stuff. Of course, we buy stuff. It's just about, okay, do we always have to buy new stuff? That breaks, do I go and buy a new one, or do I actually get it fixed, or do I then or give it to somebody who can get it fixed? Or in the case of Reduce, do I need to buy all that? Or food waste is a great example, probably the best example. If you want to do something to kind of reduce your carbon footprint, it's reduce your food waste. And we're all guilty, I'm sure, of buying stuff and you end up chucking it out. And I've got when I do my presentation, I've got some figures in there which make your hair stand on end, really. So it's not about, I appreciate people still buy stuff, of course they do. It's thinking about there are other options to reduce some of that waste. And obviously, at a time when the cost of living is, going through the roof, then wasting less also saves money. So it makes sense environmentally, but obviously for your pocket as well.
So is an example something like you're in your supermarket, there are bags of veg, buy separate vegetables so that you've been buying exactly what you want.
Fundamentally, it's buy what you need.
Right.
And then so there's a whole tips, really basic tips sometimes, but we all forget them. So if you go out of a shopping list and you stick to it, then you meal plan, you have a shopping list, and that means if you stick to it, you buy what you need, and then you eat everything you've bought, and you don't waste anything. But we all get kind of a bit sidetracked by something in the aisles, or we think, oh, this bag of carrots, there's like 3 times as many and it's only twice the price, I'll get them. But then you might end up like chucking out half of them. So it's just trying to think a bit sensibly is the wrong word, but just think there are other options sometimes. I think my example of Reduce in a way, but I've lived my life now, is that so at Christmas time, this very pertinent now, I try, and not everything, but I try to buy things that aren't stuff, but are like experiences or vouchers. So for the last few years, I've always bought my parents a voucher to go to a restaurant locally, and a voucher to get some tickets to the theatre. And so, it's a nice present, something for them to look forward to, and it hasn't created any waste. And all it's done is support a couple of local, establishment, a restaurant and a theatre near to them. Everyone's a winner, really. Otherwise, how many times do we say, oh, I've got no idea what to get them for Christmas. I'll just get something. And you just buy something, which, perhaps they want, perhaps they don't. And it's a bit, it's just trying to get people out of that mindset slightly. We don't have to buy new stuff all the time, though clearly we have to buy new stuff some of the time.
Okay, so I mean, are you linked to repair shops?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, George, I've got my presentation. Do you want me to quickly whiz through the presentation, which covers some of this, or
yes, please, because okay. I'm sort of dying to hear about that, because I'm somebody who's
you got me
cobbled together all sorts of things with glue, to keep them going. So
Yeah.
I wonder if that's part of your presentation now.
Well, tell you what, if you've been with us back in, when did we do it? July, that was Somerset Reuse Week. So we've done a reuse week, we've done a recycling week. This is Reduce Week, and then we're probably going to have a week dedicated to food waste in particular because it is so important next year. But reuse, I'll come on to that in a minute because it is all part of this picture. You know, there are some blurred lines obviously between these things sometimes. So, are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm going to whiz through now. So, without getting too academic and boring, there's a thing that we talk about called the waste hierarchy, which is that kind of levels of goodness in terms of what you do with waste. So, at the bottom of that, there you've got dispose of it. So, get rid of it. So, that is stick it in landfill. The worst thing you can do with waste. Recover is you're getting something from it. So, for example, that might be we've got an energy from waste facility where you burn stuff that cannot be recycled. It generates heat, it generates electricity. So you're recovering something from it. And then you've got recycling. So I think now, our recycling rate is getting up towards 60%, which is amazing. Everyone's pretty comfortable with recycling. Most people are recycling in some way or another. I think people have got the message with that. There's still more to do. We want to be able to collect different stuff from the curbside and everything. But I think recycling is kind of in everyone's mind. People know what it is. They know it's good, and just about everybody wants to do it. And then even better than recycling, though, is reuse. So something comes to the end of its life. Maybe it's broken. What do? Do you recycle it? Yeah, that'd be all right. Or do you go and get it fixed and then reuse it? So that brings us on to what you're talking about. There's about 16 repair cafes in the county at the moment. We've always done a bit to support them as best we can. At the moment, we've particularly got a project called Fixie, which is a mobile van, nice and blue and white and very striking. And that is particularly focused on encouraging people to get electricals repaired, because perhaps more than anything else, when something electrical goes wrong, unless you're electronically minded or an electrician, you tend to think, oh, never mind, I'll go and get a new one. But it's amazing if you know what you're doing, how much stuff can get fixed. So those repair cafes, if you take along an electrical item, chances are there's somebody there who will, with a bit of nous and a bit of knowledge, will be able to get it working again. And if you go to any of those repair cafes, and think in West Somerset, I know for sure there's one in Porlock. I'm pretty sure there's one in Minehead. Apologies. I can whiz over to our webpage in a minute and check. Take them along, and chances are somebody will be able to fix it for you. And it's for free. You can make a little donation if you want, but then you go home, you've got that item, you're using it again. You're not going out to buy another one. So the whole demand for more materials, all of which is kind of bad for the environment, is decreased ever so slightly. So that's reuse. And then the best thing you can do is reduce. So don't buy it in the first place unless you need it. And I come back to what we've been saying. We live in the real world. People buy stuff. People need stuff. This is about, okay, but think about the options. Sometimes there are other options to buying something new, and or buying stuff you don't need. So all of what we want to do is move people, I guess, upwards. So away from stuff that gets chucked away, thrown into landfill or whatever, although very little of that happens in Somerset now, towards the reduce end of the spectrum. So when you're not buying stuff you don't need, fundamentally, you're wasting less, which means you're saving money as well. So Fixie talked about that a second ago, but recycling. So the recycling rate in this county at the moment is 56%. After that, and that was last year, and that was after a decade of being about 52%. So those blue bags, Recycle More, has made a significant kind of impact on the recycling rate, which is great. And we haven't seen the full effects of that yet because the whole county hasn't been on it for a year. So that, all things being equal, that number should go up as well. And I think probably almost as importantly, or more importantly, is the weight of rubbish in people's bins. Since we've introduced Recycle More, it takes a while for the data to kind of feed its way through, but it looks like it's going to reduce that by about 20%. So 20% less rubbish in bins, which is great, because if it's not in the bins, then it's being recycled. So that's recycling going in the right direction, and great. Reuse, there's the Fixie van in all its glory. It's out there visiting repair cafes, adding a bit of extra. It's got some tools and spares in there, but also, so it goes along to repair cafes and sort of helps them do repairs. but it also probably more often it's out there at events, talking to people about repair and reuse, telling them where their local repair cafe is and when it runs, and just I think really introducing people to the idea. Loads of people still think, I've had those conversations, but say, yeah, do you know, I never really thought about reuse. I just tend to go and get a new thing. But I think it's just about shifting people gradually up that kind of that sort of ladder of good stuff to do with waste, and get people thinking about reuse and recycling. So yeah, reuse and reduce.
Sorry, can I just interrupt a minute?
Yes.
How do people out there find out about where the repair cafes are?
Well, you can go to our website, so somersetwaste.gov.uk, and then it's /Fixie. If you go there, there's a page that's got a list of all the repair cafes. It's got a list of all the events that Fixie's going to, and to be honest, the main route that individual repair cafes use tends to be social media, and I know that's not for everybody, but also they tend to be run by volunteers, so there's a limit to what they can, the time they can spend on this sort of thing, and social media is a quick and easy way of spreading the word about stuff. So they tend to be sort of once a month or once every other month on a particular day of the week. So once you kind of know where yours is, you'll probably see flyers coming up to in the window to remind you and that sort of thing. But if you go to our Fixie page, it's got a whole list of them. It's got a list of them all, and whenever their next event is, I think that's all listed on there as well. And there's also information about if you want to get involved with them, because they're always looking for people to get involved. And so if you happen to have any repair skills, whether it's electrical or mechanical or any sort of fixing type skills, you can bet your local repair cafe would bite your hand off to have you come along and help people fix stuff.
So I think if anybody's listening out there, hearing that sounds absolutely for me, either taking stuff along to get repaired and they haven't got access to a computer to find out where they are, please phone us, the village agents. We can give you that information. So don't worry if you haven't got a computer, you're not internet savvy, not a problem. Just give us a ring on our main phone line, 01823 331 222, and we will help you with that information.
Yeah, and they're really great. They're almost like social events now, but inevitably, there's tea, there's cake, there's people chatting. There's a really lovely kind of atmosphere when you go along. I had a long-standing broken CD player that I'd had since the teenage years, which I was all poised to throw out, and I thought, no, do you know what? I'll practice what I preach, and went down to the Taunton Repair Cafe, and within about 5 minutes, for the cost of amazing, it was a rubber band that had gone in it. So for the price of a rubber band and blowing some dust off the laser, something that I would have got recycled and gone and bought myself a new one is back up and running again. It's just I didn't know. I'm terrified about the idea of taking the back off a CD player, because I don't know what I'm doing. I would have done more damage than good. But somebody who knows what they're doing, it was an easy job. Everyone's happy. I give them a couple of quid because I'm just delighted to have my CD player going again.
Sounds great, doesn't it,
Yeah,
Wayne?
brilliant.
Really great.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I say Porlock, I think is relatively new for sure. I think there may be one in my head, but don't quote me on that. I need to check. But yeah, Porlock's relatively new, and I think doing getting lots of interest. So to come back to that very first point, what is reducing? It is technically best described as buying less or buying differently to waste less. That is good for the planet, obviously, because you're not using new materials and you're not having to get rid of old materials. You're just getting less stuff. And obviously at the moment, the cost of living going through the roof, it's good for your pocket if you're buying less and you're spending less. And those, a couple of figures there to give you a bit of an idea. 23,000 tons of food waste from the curbside in a year, 26,000 tons of cardboard. These are vast amounts, which take a lot of effort to collect. It's great that people are actually recycling them. That's brilliant, but it's better still if we're not kind of generating that waste in the first place. And again, not for those who aren't kind of technically savvy, perhaps, or digitally minded. We're asking people to share their reducing ideas throughout this week. So you can do it on our Facebook page, or you can email that address there, recycle@somersetwaste.gov.uk, because we haven't got all the answers. People tend to have much better ideas than we do. So share them, and we can share them with other people. So we tried to look at this in kind of 3 particular themes during Reduce Week as kind of 3 easily kind of tangible ways that people can kind of think about reducing. And food waste is the biggest and most important one in many ways. So there's a figure there, so the average UK family throws away 60 quid's worth of food that could have been eaten. So that's not even including food that was out of date and couldn't have been eaten. That's food that was okay to eat. £60 a month, that adds up when money's tight. So there's obviously it's sensible to reduce your food waste as much as you can. And this is specifically in Somerset. So we did this back in 2008 and we'll be doing it again early next year. It's where we literally get a sample of people's bins and go through it with a fine-tooth comb to see what's in there, to see what are people still throwing away. So in 2008, so it's a few years ago, but over a quarter was food waste, and that's in your big black wheelie bin. And of that 26%, 70%, 71% was could have been eaten. It was avoidable waste. They just hadn't been used. And then amazingly, 35% of it was still in its packaging. So you've gone to a shop, you thought, I need that, you've bought it, you haven't even taken it out of the packaging, you've thrown it away and not even, into your bin. So I find that, that's quite surprising. I think most people are aware of food waste recycling, but clearly, not everybody. But I think things have moved on probably a fair bit since 2018. But we'll see when we do the composition analysis next year. So food waste, it makes total sense, in lots of different ways. And as we quickly whiz through at the beginning, there's really sensible things that we all forget to do or don't do or just haven't got into the habit. It's just about habit making, really. So meal planning, it's only recently that I properly got my head around meal planning, looking a week ahead, going out with a list. When you've got, before you go, just check what you got in a cupboard, because you might have some of it already, so you don't need to buy it again. But then when you've got a list, stick to that list. Try not to be sidetracked by stuff that just grabs your eye on the day, because then you end up you buy the stuff that you need, and then you can eat everything that you buy and you throw away nothing or very little. And then the bit that people probably a little bit better at, but there's always more to do, is around storing and eating your leftovers. So making good use of your fridge and freezer. A little tip someone was telling me recently, apparently that works really well, and it sounds really daft, but having a shelf dedicated to just the stuff that's about to go off, even have a sign on it saying "eat this first," where you just shuffle, so there's not something stuck at the back of the fridge that you didn't realize was going out of date. Just kind of rotate the stuff in your fridge around a bit, get a shelf where actually I need to eat this stuff first. And using the freezer, batch cook and freeze stuff. So if you want to buy a economy size carrots, let's say, we'll make a big thing, eat half of it, freeze the other half, and then you're not wasting. What you don't want to do is use half the carrots in that bag and let the others go off in the fridge. So really common sense stuff, but and it's not about, these aren't great innovative ideas. It's just stuff that lots of people do, but not everyone. I certainly didn't do it as much as I should, but I'm much better at it now, and it actually it feels good not to be tipping uneaten food into a food waste bin.
And are people, can I just ask you this? I just noticed, just looking at the bin on the screen now, are people putting vegetables out of the packing into the food waste, or are you still finding that people are chucking in an unopened bag of carrots?
Do you know what? I don't think that packaging in the food waste is a big issue. So I think when people are, that was literally going through the contents of a bin, or thousands of bins in 2018. So that would have been stuff in the packaging that had gone into the big wheelie bin. We don't find that food packaging is a big issue actually within the food waste itself. In the little brown bin or your food caddy, it doesn't seem to be so much of a problem.
Okay.
Right. So that's food waste, big deal, and something that affects us all, and we can all sort of think a little bit differently about, perhaps. And buying better. So all sorts of different ways that consume. The way we consume stuff has changed. It changes all the time. We live in a consumer culture. Lots of advertising. We are encouraged to buy stuff, which is all fine, and it's not to say that that's bad. It's just think about other options as well. So buying locally, rather than buying stuff online and having it delivered in a cardboard box that might be 5 times as big as it needs to be. If you buy local, you're not traveling. So sometimes people drive. You don't need to drive off to go to big shopping trips as well. But if you buy locally, there's less travel involved. Smaller independent shops or local shops don't need those large amounts of packaging. You can also try stuff on, so you don't need to return stuff, and you're supporting the local economy as well. And rather than perhaps big multinationals, you're supporting some of those local independents who perhaps got a bit more invested in the local community and reducing their environmental footprint. Charity shops, a great way of that's kind of where you get those blurred lines of reuse or recycling and reducing. But if you're charity shopping, if you are buying gifts or clothes or whatever from a charity shop instead of going out and buying new stuff, then you're reducing. And I think the charity shop kind of world has kind of got a slightly different feel to it than it had a few years ago. I think my daughter, who's 14, she happily charity shops. I think most of the clothes that she buys now are charity shop clothes, because you can get really good stuff, make some really good good value, good brands for very little, often stuff that you wouldn't find in the high street and nobody else is wearing, and also you're contributing to a good cause as well as doing a good deed in recycling essentially or reducing. You're also inevitably contributing to a good cause of a charity shop. And then a very timely point now is say no to the buy now deals. So for one, Black Friday or similar. Again, not to say if you buy something on Black Friday that's evil and bad. We're just saying that events like that tend to drive unnecessary spending, and you might buy stuff that actually, did I need that, or was it just seem to be a little bit cheaper than normal, and you don't use it and you waste it. But also, I think it's Which magazine has repeatedly puts out its analysis, which basically says all that stuff that sounds like an amazing deal on the Black Friday, very often they aren't. It's just the way they've been kind of presented and packaged. They're not always as great as they sound. So buying, but however, how we buying better, thinking a little bit kind of differently. And then this one again may not be, it's not for everybody, but there are, if you go digital, that can be a good way of reducing stuff. So there's my example of vouchers and experiences instead of stuff for gifts. That's something, one of these things I can say that I've probably taken on and try and live by. But also, if digital magazine subscriptions or movie subscriptions, those sorts of things, they can often be cheaper than buying the actual, a DVD. I'm showing my age there. DVDs, I don't think many people buy them anymore. They take up less space and they create less waste. Not for everybody, but for some people that'd be ideal. And if you are into, if you've got a smartphone or tablet or whatever, then there are a number of apps out there which are brilliant as ways of reducing waste. So there's one called Olio, there's one called Too Good to Go, and they sort of work in the field of, I know which one I've used a couple of times, where there are some shops which will say they'll put up on that app five pasties available. It's basically a way of shifting stuff that at the end of a day would go to waste, so they can reduce it, make it a very, very ridiculously cheap prices. But if you pick it up in the next hour, it will be here. So it's a funny old world I'm only just sort of dabbling with now. But if you're sort of tech savvy, it's worth having a look. So Olio and
the magic bags, Mark. Is that the magic bag?
Yeah, that's it. I think there are more than those two. But it's the same kind of principle. Yeah, rather than waste it, let's bag it up and put it a incredibly cheap price. So that you can save money that way. It stops waste from those shops. Refill is probably a bit more well known. That's a really cool little app that tells you where there are water fountains. Not all, it's fountains and more, I think, basically. So publicly accessed sources of water. So rather than going to buy a bottle of water, if you keep a drinking bottle with you, the refill app will tell you wherever you are, click onto it, it'll say where's your nearest refill point. And I know relatively recently there's one in Taunton, middle of Taunton. I think there's one in Minehead on the seafront, I think. Yeah. Bridgewater, possibly, I think. But Refill is like a national charity sort of organisation, maybe not a charity, but an organization that is promoting it, and anywhere that allows people to come in and kind of fill their bottles can register on there. So there's loads of them. Sometimes places, foyers of certain shops, you can generally find somewhere very close to fill your water bottle using that. And then there's things like Freegal and Gumtree, which is, I guess, like variations on eBay, but Freegal is the one I'm kind of a bit more au fait with, where it's just a swap shop online. So you say, I want to get rid of, I don't know, some fencing panels or a lawnmower or a TV. And that goes out to the Freegal community, and then someone can just come and pick it up. I got rid of a bread maker the other day. We never used it, like most bread makers. That would have been that would have been a way for someone to have reduced in the past. Don't buy me a bread maker when clearly I've shown no particular interest in baking bread in a bread maker. But and so put it on Freegal. Someone came round, took it away, and that's a bit of space cleared out for me. And somebody, who messaged back saying it works, lovely, brilliant, thank you. A nice kind of warm glow you get from that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we use FreeCycle a lot over here in
Somerset,
and people are literally giving away. You want to paint your shed. The next thing you know, somebody's giving away some really good shed paint, half a can. You only need half a can. It's 15 quid saved. They're really happy. They've got something to help you out. Brilliant.
And they've got it out of the shed where they've been kind of tripping over it, thinking, I've got to get rid of that half a tin of paint. It's one of technology has got good things and bad things, hasn't it? But I think that kind of a really easy network where you can give stuff away, swap stuff, is a really interesting kind of realm. And if you're into that, if you're digitally comfortable, then it's worth having a look at.
Yeah, and you can also do that on Facebook.
Yeah, that's right. Facebook.
There are lots of buy and sell sites as well. I mean, I recently gave away a bed. Fantastic. I didn't want it. And somebody came up within a couple of days, absolutely delighted. I feel great. They feel great. What's not to like?
Absolutely. And there's Facebook Marketplace. There's no, if you want to make a few quid out of it, but my experience of Facebook Marketplace is it's you're not going to make a great living out of it, but it's a tiny, a little bit of money, and you've got rid of. So if there's something you want to get rid of, and if if you don't want to take it to a charity shop, maybe try it on Facebook Marketplace for a week first and see if you can get a fiver for it. Either way, everyone's a winner. Whoever's bought that has got it at a cheap price. You've got rid of it. Everyone's happy. So we're nearly there. So Christmas in mind, I just thought it's worth mentioning. So we're entering that period of not mad consumerism, but hyper consumerism, isn't it? So that's the latest John Lewis advert there, just as an example. We are encouraged relentlessly to buy stuff, aren't we? It's we live in a consumerist society, but now is everyone's struggling with the cost of living. Just think about all those things we just talked about. You don't have to buy new stuff all the time, even if John Lewis tells you in its nice cuddly sort of way, but it wants you to. Of course, you're going to buy some new stuff. You're going to buy gifts, but maybe not. Maybe there are different ways of buying some of those gifts. It's just trying to get people to think about those other options, really, and say that figure there. So in January, the waste goes up by about 25%. That's a bit of a crude comparison, but January collections are about 25% up on the average month for the rest of the year. A lot of it is food, because we've gone out and said, oh God, it's Christmas, I'm going to buy loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff, because that's what you do at Christmas. And I don't know if anyone likes these, but I'll buy a couple of boxes. They might. We're just kind of in that kind of mindset a bit. So it's just this year, maybe temper that a bit, have a little think, do that meal planning. Actually, if I'm hosting, how many people have I got? How much do I actually need? I'll do a plan, I'll write a list, and I'll only stick to that list. And you might find A, you're saving quite a lot of money, and B, you're not chucking out quite so much in the new year.
Mark, does that 25% include Christmas trees being put out?
Well, do you know what? Christmas trees is not that big a thing at the moment. So mostly people take their when I say recycling, so that I think that is from Curbside, so stuff we collect, and we don't collect Christmas trees, so most people take those to a recycling site. And I've just remembered what that little quote at the bottom is. That's quoting my mum, and I'm sure she wouldn't appreciate me saying it, but what I've heard her say about so many times, where she's bought a gift and said, oh, that doesn't look like much though, does it? And I kind of, no, but it doesn't matter. It was you thought about it. It's a nice gift. You don't have to spend X amount of money. It doesn't have to be in a big box to be a nice present. Do you know what I mean?
And I think some families have actually agreed now, look, we haven't got a lot of money. We just got to perhaps spend £10 on each person.
Yeah.
You know,
and what
that is the maximum amount of money. It's unnecessary to spend any more.
Yeah, and you can, in my family, so I'm one of 5 children, and we now have a nominated person we buy for. We don't buy everybody a Christmas present. I buy my brother buys me, my sister's exchanged, and then you end up with something perhaps a little bit more substantial that you actually want and is good, as opposed to 4 things which might have been kind of, oh God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to buy Mark this year. Let's get him one of those. He might like that.
Well, asking people what they need is another.
Of course, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? It's that whole idea. It has to be a surprise, but surprises are great so long as it's a surprise that ends up being one they want. If it's something they don't want, that's not that's no good. You've spent some money on something no one wants, and then someone else has got the awkward thing of pretending to like it, and then trying to find a way of getting rid of it.
Yeah, so, and then the next thing you know, it comes round in a tombola. No, you go out and you see it on a tombola.
Yeah. So absolutely. Ask people what they want. Make a wish list. Make a wish list, and then for certain it's not going to end up in the tombola next week.
Can I just ask you? You were talking about the curbside pickup, and as you know, we the village agents are working with a lot of vulnerable people, some of whom are housebound. How do people ask a member of your team to come perhaps up a difficult little path or a track to pick up their bins if they can't wheel or can't carry something up there? How do they do that, Mark?
So they need to contact their district council. So at the moment, when it comes to any sort of contact with us by phone, then you call your district council. They're all part of the partnership. So wherever you live, so you'll be Somerset, Western, Taunton, out your way. If you give them a call, their customer services people there will know about us and our services, and you can request what's called an assisted collection. So that is where the crew member you'd have to leave it in outside the house in an agreed spot, but they would walk up, collect it, bring it down to normally you have to present it at the curbside, because if you didn't, all the rounds would take twice as long. We need twice as many people, because it obviously adds time going up and down pathway. So that's why we say present it at the curb. But if you are physically unable to do that, or there's nobody in your household who can do that for you, then we should be able to give you an assisted collection. And I don't want to say it's automatic. You ask for it, and then you'll speak to somebody. And if you're physically unable to take your waste out, then you should have an assisted collection. There's no charge for it. It's just they'll need to plan it in. I think it might actually be a separate crew do that. Not totally sure, perhaps not, but it needs to be on. They've got like little handheld devices which will record any sort of not oddities, but sort of unusual things on the round. So they'll need to be reminded that, hang on, it's number 21. Theirs is an assisted collection. I need to go and find their bags and bring them down to the curbside.
So I'll just say, for anybody out there who's worried about making a phone call, perhaps they're not feeling that great, can't cope with a phone call at the moment, just pop down to one of our talking cafes. I think a lot of you know where they are. And we, the village agents, will help you make that phone call and just set that up for you. So don't worry about doing that phone call for an assisted pickup, okay?
No, absolutely. That's great. And then finally, here's just a little reminder. So, okay, we can't always reduce and we can't always reuse. So if you can't do those, then remember that picture at the very beginning. Recycling is still really good. And we said our recycling rate has gone up. That's brilliant. And I think something that people find reassuring is what happens. So you make the effort to put stuff in the right containers. What happens to it? Well, because you do that, we're able to keep, virtually all of it in this country. We occasionally see horror stories of things, washing up on beaches in the Far East or whatever. But because in Somerset we separate things, that means that we have what's called, we refer to as good quality recycling, but it's all the right stuff. It's not contaminated. And if you've got that, then you've got a much better chance of getting it recycled in this country. If it's contaminated, got mixed up with all sorts of different things, then our reprocessors in this country say we don't take that, it's not good enough quality, and that's when it starts going further afield. So amazing, 99.4% of the plastic we collect gets turned into new stuff, new products or packaging in this country. 97 overall of our recycling. So there's a really good figures, but that's only possible because people put it into the right containers really well. And as we go into Christmas, there's some sort of usual suspects on the side there that you might think, can I recycle those? Can't I? Well, the good news is that, those big tins of plastic, so big metal tins, they can go in your blue bag. The big plastic tubs you get these days, they can go in your blue bag. Those Pringles, brand name, but Pringle tubes, we can't collect them at the curbside. They are in many ways some of the worst kind of packaging you can get. There are about 5 different things melded into one. So you got card, you got plastic, you got foil, you got metal. They really are a bad idea in terms of packaging. But we are now taking them at 12 of our recycling sites. So if you do visit a recycling site, if you again, it's on our website, but 12 of them will take Pringles or similar branded tubes like that, basically.
So Mark, that's the kind of thing you're really asking us all to think about.
Yeah.
When we're even buying a product, if it's in a cardboard box, we're kind of feeling happy, straight tin. So that is a kind of individual decision we could make to make a difference.
And one thing we all know is the only thing that really gets people to, businesses, big business to change how it does things is people power, isn't it? So, if people are comfortable, carry on buying those Pringles tubes, then there's no incentive for Mr. Pringle to change the way he does things. But actually, in the longer term, there probably will, because there's some legislative change coming called basically extended producer responsibility, which is basically saying that if the stuff that you produce is hard to recycle, then you're going to have to meet some of the costs of getting it recycled. But the best thing to do is, individual choice, absolutely. But if you try and steer away from stuff that's hard to recycle, and fundamentally, if it's made up of multiple different things, then it's going to be hard to recycle. So how, imagine the process involved in separating the metal bottom from that cardboard tube to go their separate ways. A nightmare, really, really difficult. So yeah, I guess your shopping choices is what drives what businesses do. And then things like, those crackers down the bottom. So we can recycle cardboard, but we can't recycle that shiny foil stuff. So what we'd ask is, put them, when you've finished with them, the foily stuff has got to go in the bin, I'm afraid, but the cardboard you can put in the cardboard recycling, or even better, buy crackers that don't have foily stuff on, basically. Christmas cards, we can recycle Christmas cards, but not if they're covered in foil or dangly bits or bits of decorative stuff. So you're straight up and down standard Christmas card that can go in your cardboard recycling.
So that's something else we can think about, and we can do. We can make a choice to buy something that's simply made without multiple different bits and pieces, which you can't recycle.
Yeah. I mean, and in all of this, I never like to be, to come across as, hopefully I don't come across as telling people what they should do, because, I'm not in the business of that. I think it's just considering the options. There are, you can probably buy everything you want, and it can be a bit more, sound in terms of its sustainability and recyclability. So it's just, if that's important to you, then just try and apply it to your shopping this Christmas.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to ask, Mark Wayne?
Just very quickly around the recycling with Christmas wrapping paper. Some could be taken, some couldn't, depending on.
It's the scrunch test, I think you're talking about, Wayne. The famous scrunch test. So again, unless you're kind of start getting involved in this kind of sector, it's hard to understand these things. But wrapping paper isn't all the same. Not all wrapping paper is the same. Fundamentally, if that stuff that's glittery, the stuff that's very shiny, the stuff that might feel a bit foil-like, just isn't recyclable. Stuff that's paper is. So there's the scrunch test, and if you can scrunch up your wrapping paper and it stays scrunched, then it's recyclable, and you can put it in your paper, in your paper and card box, the black box, or if you take it to the recycling site, they'll take it there. If it doesn't stay scrunched, it pops back up, then that's because it's made of stuff that makes it not recyclable. So the scrunch test is a useful way of useful way of checking. But and again, going back to source, it's kind of okay, so I can either recycle what basically, I guess what we'd ideally ask is, before you buy your wrapping paper, think about it. If it's really glittery and covered in and looks like tin foil on the reverse, then it's not going to be recyclable. And so if you want to buy things that are recyclable, buy something that's just more normal paper.
I noticed, though, I don't know about you, Wayne, I've bought a few bargains recently, but there's a lot of just brown paper.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people making their own as well, getting stamps.
Yeah. Hey, exactly. And there's I forgot what it's called now. It's like a Japanese tradition where they have these beautiful cloths. You wrap things with beautiful cloths, and that's kind of part of the gift that then gets returned when you give a gift. But yeah, I know people use newspaper, and wrapping paper is one of those things, isn't it? It's kind of gone in a flash. And what my personal approach is, I try and save it. So I try not to rip it to shreds when I get stuff. I just try and open it as reasonably carefully, and then store it away for wrapping somebody else's present up.
Yeah, so getting maybe some string or ribbon or something that you can reuse every year.
Yeah, you can, if you're that way inclined, get quite creative about it. Like Wayne said, some brown paper with brown. I think I always like gifts in brown paper. I think they look really old, kind of, don't know, they look old-fashioned and like Christmas used to be, kind of thing. But I guess if you've got brown paper, you want to put, stamp it, make it very individual, and that's lovely, isn't it?
Well, thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate you coming on and all your ideas and just sharing with us your sides today. Hopefully that's going to really help people out there give a little bit of thought and maybe change the way they do things.
That's all. And I think that's all anybody wants, is just put some ideas into people's heads, really, about maybe perhaps changing the way we do things a little bit can make quite a big difference. But I would, having had our conversation earlier as well, is even that whole world of fixing and reuse. Do go onto our website, somersetwaste.gov.uk/fixie, because there's all those repair cafes out there. They're brilliant, really an amazing resource, all done by volunteers, which is brilliant, giving up their time and doing a really valuable job.
Anything else to ask, Wayne?
No other questions to me. Thanks very much for your time, Mark.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Bye, everybody, and thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye-bye.